Hello everyone, welcome to this video on how to write Jest unit tests for the Shopware administration. My name is Ramona Schwering and I'm working in the quality assurance of the product development team. In this video, we want to write unit tests for Shopware components in the administration, more specifically component tests for a component called SVAlert. This video will have a strong focus on how unit tests should be written when it comes to components in our administration. So before we start writing unit tests together, I want to say I assume that you already know what a unit test is and why we are doing it. Furthermore, you should know what component tests are and what we want to achieve with them. In addition, I assume you already got a running Shopware 6 installation. Your repository used for that should be based on development template, as we need to use some of the scripts provided by it. At Shopware, we use Jest when it comes to unit testing our JavaScript code. Next to component testing, we are using it to unit test JavaScript services, but that's a topic for another video. Jest itself is a JavaScript testing framework with a focus on simplicity. It works well with a lot of JavaScript frameworks, including Vue.js. In order to test our components, we are using Vue test utils in our administration. Vue test utils is the official unit testing utility library for Vue.js, tailored specifically for Vue components. Before we dive into component testing, let's look at the component we want to test. It's called SVAlert. The SVAlert component is used to convey important information to the user. It comes in 4 variations: success, info, warning, and error. These variations have default icons assigned, which can be changed and represent different actions. Via the default slot, you can provide the message you want. Alright, as we now know our component to test, we will take a closer look at the test structure. The test folder structure should match the source folder structure. For this video, I navigate to the folder where the SVAlert component is located, and afterwards to the folder in which I need to create my SVAlert test. When creating the file, the name should also be the same as the component has, with an additional .spec before the ending .js. At first, we need to import the things we need. Typically, we need a wrapper to depict our alert. Remember, a wrapper is an object that contains a mounted component, or vnode, and methods to test. Of course, we need to import our component itself as well. Let's continue with the test structure itself. We'll use the modular syntax you might already know if you wrote front-end tests before. First things first, we need to begin with the describe function. It can be seen as a frame for structuring our test and is important for the usage of lifecycle hooks. Afterwards, we will use the it function representing the test itself. You see, in this first test we want to check if our wrapper, and thus our component, is a Vue instance. In our test, we can use the wrapper now, so let's mount our alert component in order to have a wrapper to work with. Next, we are ready to start writing assertions. A test assertion is a statement that describes the logic of the system on the test. So we're checking our component with the use of these assertions. In our test, it looks like this. Okay, we completed our test now, at least in theory. Let's see how it turns out when running it. Shopware's development template provides you PSH commands to run unit tests. Of course, you can use a command which executes only unit tests on change files. It automatically restarts if a file gets saved. This should be used during the development of unit tests. See here. Beware, this only applies to the administration. If you use unit tests and plugins, you might need to write own scripts for that. Oh, our test threw a warning. Let's take a look. As you see, it's not enough for us to just write the test as usual. We need to consider some important differences. We can't test components that easily like in other Vue projects because we are supporting template inheritance and extendability for third-party developers. This causes overhead, which we need to bear in mind. We are using a global object as an interface for the whole administration. Every component gets registered to this object. Therefore, we have access to our component with the Shopware component build method. This creates a native view component with a working template. Next, we need to check if our test is passing now. Let's see. Yes, that made our test pass, but there's still a warning concerning SV icon. This is a component missing in our test, which we need to stop. We need to use shallow mount now, as we need a wrapper that contains the mounted and rendered view component, but with stopped child components. It will look like this. Okay, let's run our test again and see if it passes. Indeed, it's passing now, without warnings. Yay! We wrote our first component test together, using Jest and View Test utils. However, our test doesn't do that much yet, does it? Let's think about a more meaningful one. Actually, the task of an alert is displaying a message for the user in most cases. So let's write a test for this text located in a slot. In order to find the slot holding our message, let's debug the component via console log on the wrapper's HTML. There it is. You can see the component's HTML. I assume the text of our message will be in the div with the selector as alert message. You can set the content of a slot during component mount. This default is used to define the slot in which we'll put our text, so that we can set custom text as our message. Afterwards, you can make an assertion that the text passed to the slot will be rendered inside the desired element. In this case, we search in the wrapper for the element with the selector as alert message and check if the text is there. Last but not least, we need to remove the log to keep our code nice and clean. There we go! Second test written and ran successfully. Finally, I hope you liked this video and found a little starting point on how to write Jest unit tests for components in Shopware's administration. Thank you all for watching and hopefully see you in the next episode. Goodbye!